I used to complain about my small room, the peeling wallpaper, the squeaky fan, the window that didn't close all the way. I'd tell my mom, when I make money, the first thing I'm buying is a bigger house, and she'd just smile, like she knew something I didn't. My name's Aaron Malik, 28 now, software engineer, city apartment, all the comfort I once dreamed of. But this story takes me back to when I was 17, when life felt too small for my ambition, and I thought my parents were the reason I wasn't moving fast enough. We lived in a 2-room house at the edge of town. One for me, one for them. Every night, I'd slam my door shut, frustrated at the noise from the TV in the other room or the way Mom would peek in to say, "Good night, Beta." I thought privacy meant freedom. I thought space meant success, until the day I came home early from school. The power was out, the house was quiet, and both my parents were asleep. Or so I thought. I opened their door to ask about dinner plans, and froze. They weren't asleep. They were lying on a thin floor mat, side by side, using one old blanket. The same one they'd bought when they got married. No bed, no fan, just the faint sound of their breathing and the window cracked open to let the summer heat out. And I stood there, 17, angry, selfish, realizing that the reason my room had a bed, a fan, and a door that shut was because they'd chosen not to have one. I'd been living in comfort they'd sacrificed for, and that small room I hated so much, it was built from everything they gave up. That night we sat together on the porch. No phones, no rush, no deadlines. Just the sound of crickets and her voice telling stories I'd heard 100 times but suddenly couldn't get enough of. She told me about the nights she couldn't sleep, so she'd replay old voicemails of me saying, "Love you, Mom." She said that sometimes she'd call just to hear my automated greeting, "Hey, this is Ryan," and pretend I was really there. I wanted to tell her how sorry I was for every ignored message, every "I'll call tomorrow" that never came. But before I could speak, she reached over, held my hand, and said, "Don't apologize. Just don't disappear again." And that hit harder than any guilt ever could. Because forgiveness, that's what mothers do. They don't need explanations. They just need presence. Now every night before I go to bed, I call her. Sometimes we talk for an hour. Sometimes for a minute. Sometimes we don't say anything at all, just breathe on the line, knowing the other person's still there. Last week, she said something I'll never forget. "You used to be the sound I missed the most. Now you're the one I fall asleep to." And that's when I realized, love doesn't vanish when we stop calling. It just waits in silence until we finally pick up. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the ceiling fan, the same one I used to curse, suddenly felt too loud, too heavy. Every rotation reminded me of what I'd seen. I thought about Dad's hands, rough, cracked from years at the factory, how he'd still rub his palms together before shaking mine, like he was trying to make them softer first. How he'd come home smiling, carrying leftovers from his lunchbox, saying, "Your mom likes this curry, let her have it." I never realized that half his smile was pain he didn't want me to see. Mom always said she wasn't tired, but her eyes told another story. She'd hum while folding my clothes, wait up for me when I stayed late at a friend's house, and pretend the old TV shows made her laugh. But that night, when I saw her sleeping on that hard floor, her arm draped over Dad like he was both her husband and her pillow, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to wake her up, tell her to take my bed, but I didn't. I just stood there in the doorway, ashamed of every complaint I'd ever made. The next morning, she woke up before sunrise, as always, made tea, toasted bread, called me for breakfast like nothing happened. Her voice was soft, steady, like the world hadn't just shifted for me overnight. I sat there at the table, unable to meet her eyes. She noticed. Moms always do. "What's wrong, Beta?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "Why don't you and Dad sleep in my room?" She laughed, gentle and confused. "And where will you sleep?" "I'll sleep anywhere. I said quietly. She reached across the table and touched my hand. No, Aaron. You sleep there. You earned it. That broke me. Because I hadn't earned anything. They had. And they were still giving it away, even when they had nothing left to give. That weekend, I stayed home instead of going out with friends. For once, I didn't hide behind my headphones or rush out after breakfast. I just watched. Watched how Dad ironed his old work shirt, the same one with the faded company logo, and how Mom pressed his lunchbox into his hands before he left, whispering, "Be careful near the machines." He smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "Always am." I realized I'd seen that same exchange 1,000 times, but I'd never felt it until now. When he left, Mom went straight to cleaning. Not because the house was dirty, but because that's what she did when she worried. Every sweep of the broom was a prayer that Dad would come home safe. That afternoon, I helped her cook. We didn't talk much, just chopped, stirred, waited for the rice to steam. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You've been quiet lately." I smiled. "Just thinking." She nodded like she understood more than I was ready to say. When Dad came home that evening, his hands were bandaged again. I didn't yell this time. I didn't even ask. I just took his bag, made him sit down, and brought him a plate of food. He looked at me, really looked at me, like he was trying to read my mind. "You okay, son?" he asked, and I said, "Yeah. I just wanted to eat dinner with you." He smiled, tired, proud, surprised, and for the first time in years, dinner didn't feel like routine. It felt like family. That night, I couldn't stop thinking, how many times had I walked past them without noticing what they were carrying? How many moments had I wasted being embarrassed of where I came from? The truth hit hard. They never wanted me to feel poor. They just wanted me to feel free. And they paid for that freedom with their comfort, their dreams, their sleep. Part 4. The light under the door. A few nights later, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own thoughts too loudly. I got up for some water, but as I passed my parents' room, I saw a faint light slipping out from under the door. Curiosity got me. I leaned closer, just enough to hear my mother's whisper. "Did you eat enough at dinner?" she asked softly, and then Dad's voice, tired but gentle. "Yeah." He looked happier today. I stood there, frozen. Mom sighed. "He's growing up." "I just hope he never feels ashamed of us," and Dad said, "He won't. He just needs time to see what love really looks like." I bit my lip to keep from making a sound, because they weren't talking about themselves, they were talking about me. That night, I didn't go back to bed. I sat in the hallway watching that soft yellow light flicker from beneath their door. The same light they left on every night until I fell asleep as a kid. It hit me then. Even now they were still doing it, still keeping a light on for me. The next morning I woke up early. I made breakfast, not perfect but enough. Toast, eggs, tea, just the way they liked it. When Dad walked into the kitchen, surprised, I just smiled and said, "Eat first, you'll be late." He laughed, the real kind, the one I hadn't heard in years. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the kid who wanted to leave home and never look back. I felt like the son who finally understood what it meant to come home. Years later, even when life got busier, I kept one promise to myself. No matter how late I got, no matter how tired I was, I always called, because the people who kept the light on for you, they deserve to know you still see it.